Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is great. Good to see you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about. We'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Suzy Engwall. I am the National Director at an organization called the Innovation Institute. I work for the Innovation Lab. Our core model is to take ideas and concepts from healthcare workers inside of the hospitals and bring them out to market. So we sort of have this inside out innovation program. With our innovation program, we have member hospital systems that own a percentage of our company. So we're a for-profit company owned by nonprofit hospital systems. It's a system that works really well. For many of our hospital systems, we become their innovation department. So we do work on things like culture change. We do one-on-one coaching with different innovators. We will do events like Shark Tanks and hackathons to try to bring new solutions to market to really help those patients. And then on the flip side, we also work with startups from time to time. We do a series of startup demo days so that hospital systems can see what's out there in a sort of really unthreatening way. And then we also have partners that we work with if someone comes to us needing funding or something else like that for a company they've already stood up. So that's kind of the 50,000 foot level of what we do.
Oh, fantastic. So how do you get started with an organization? Do you just just tell me a little bit about this, like the nuts and bolts of it.
Sure. So if somebody's a member of one of our member hospitals, they already are probably aware of us and they can submit an idea to us through a portal or they can reach out and talk to us. But we also have a public portal where anybody can put an idea in. And then honestly, like most of the time, people just give us a call or shoot us an email and say, hey, I want to know more about what you're doing. I have a product in mind that I want to bring forward or bring to market in healthcare. We only work in the healthcare space, which is a really fun and sometimes challenging space to be in, but really, really happy to be a part of it.
Well, that's really interesting. So you're saying that you're just sort of open, you have to be a member hospital, right? So somebody from a member hospital has to.
You do and you don't. So we have our member hospitals, and the way that we work with them is a little bit different than the public. So let's say you're a doc at one of the hospitals that we work with, and you've just submitted an idea to us, and we take it to market. When you submit that idea, it's usually very early stage. If we get a napkin sketch, it's a miracle. Most of the time, it's just, hey, I recognize this is a problem, and I have a potential solution that I want to bring forward. And we'll take a dive into the market. We'll try to look to see, number one, what the market size is, how big is the need, is this truly a need, or does that one person think it's a need, but maybe nobody else does? What kind of business model can we put behind it? And then we'll make a decision if we want to invest and bring it forward. If we do bring something to market, we share the net profits back with the member system that it came from, as well as the innovator who brought us the concept to begin with. So it's a really nice model for both of them. It gives new lines of revenue to our member systems, as well as subscription partners. We do have subscription partners that only use lab services. And then it also gives money back to the innovator to kind of help keep their juices flowing and coming up with new ideas and that kind of thing. We do have a subscription partnership that hospitals can join on and only use lab services. And the difference there is our member owner systems are actually investors in the Innovation Institute overall. So they get a return on that investment every year. Subscription partners are just using our services. So we become their innovation department and do a lot of the similar types of things, but it's just a little bit different. And then the last way is if you are a doc that isn't affiliated with us in any way, you're not a member owner, you're not a subscription partner, and maybe you have an idea you want to bring forward, we do have our public portal. And the difference with that is if we invest in the idea and bring something to market, we're the ones that will be doing the bulk of the work on that. And we'll look to retain 70% of the net profits, give the innovator back 30%, and then we'll look to retain that IP. But any patents or anything else that would be issued, the innovator would be a part of.
Wow, I've never heard of this. This is very cool. How long have you guys been around?
We were originally launched back in 2013 as a for-profit arm of the health system that we were working with then. So at that point, it was St. Joseph Health System down here in Southern California. They eventually got merged with Providence Health System, which is big. They're in 7 states, and they're actually a subscription partner of ours right now. And then our member owner systems include Avera Healthcare out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Franciscan Missionary of Our Lady out of Louisiana, Bon Secours Mercy Health, Valley Children's Health System in the Central Valley, Chalk Children's, which is Children's Hospital Orange County, and then Multi-Care Health System in the Puget Sound area. So between all of those, we probably work with about 150 different hospitals because anyone in their ecosystem can work with us.
Wow, very cool. So did you say you were attached to a specific hospital or a specific provider at one point? So you were a department of one of these providers?
Originally, right? we became the for-profit arm. We were created as a for-profit arm of St. Joseph Health System. That's how we originally got started. And then as we grew, we separated on our own, and other health systems started to invest with us, and we started working with them on their innovation programs and concepts as well. So it's been really great. We've had a lot of great growth over the past, gosh, I don't even know how many years it's been. What year is it now?
Almost 10.
Oh my gosh, so crazy. So yeah,
well, this is really cool. So
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the genesis of this? Because I mean, I know there's companies, a lot of corporates have innovation groups internally, and a lot of them sort of struggle with the relationship to the innovation group because sometimes they think it's not core. And you know, how did you start bringing value back in early enough for them to say, yeah, this is a great idea, we should continue moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think in healthcare there's a couple of different things. So one advantage we have is that hospital systems will typically invest in us. So we don't become a year-over-year cost center. You know, as you probably know, in innovation, it can take quite a few years to get something to market. And so a lot of times if hospitals stand up their own internal innovation department, after a couple of years of it being sort of nothing more than a cost center, they're at risk for maybe losing that department.
Exactly. I've seen that happen so many times. That's why I'm wondering, how is this model working? I want to replicate this. This is great.
Well, and it's really interesting too. So our parent company, Innovation Institute, has 15 or so companies underneath its umbrella. And all of those companies are profitable. They all do different types of services for healthcare. And that really helps keeps us sustainable, keeps the company profitable year over year. We've made money every single year and have had a return for our investors every single year. And that way the lab is kind of free to do what we need to do to bring some of these innovations to market. It's a hard space to be in, especially in healthcare. Buying cycles are very slow. You know, if you've got a new digital health product, it can take up to 18 months sometimes to get the full buying cycle.
For even digital products take that long?
Even digital products can be. It really depends on when you come in, when they're doing their budgets, and who you're working with. Sometimes if you can get early stage pilots, those kinds of things, that makes it a little bit easier, but it's just such a different industry than anything else out there. And the cycle times can be challenging. There's a lot of challenges in this space, but it almost makes it even more fun when you're able to get something to the finish line.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very, so I interviewed a couple of people in the medical space, and they said that there's sort of like a demarcation between the ones that have to take the long path and the short path. Do you guys focus on both, or? We do.
We try to pick projects that kind of diversify what we're working on, so that we have some quicker wins and some, maybe some incremental innovations that get to market faster, and then look for those longer play ones. Anything that's going to be FDA class 2 or 3 is going to have a really long play, probably a large research component of it. So we really focus on, diversifying that so that we've always got kind of things in queue and in flow. And I believe, I'd have to go back and check the number to be sure, but I think right now we've got 20 products to market, maybe 21. Can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah.
Since the beginning, you've got 20 products to market?
Mm-hmm. And some of them
in less than 10 years? That is amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I'm always kind of dumbfounded by it because it's really hard to get products to market in this space, but we've got, a product at CVS, which is really cool. We worked with a NASA astronaut on one of our products that can be found on Amazon. So we get to work with all kinds of really cool and interesting people too. As if the physicians aren't enough, we've got to get an astronaut who's a physician and has been to the moon and has climbed Mount Everest and makes me basically generally.
Wow, this is very cool. This is like an innovation group that works. I mean, it's hard. It's just hard to see that sort of thing. Is it? I mean, what's your secret? Like, you've got. I mean, I've seen so many groups within these organizations. Is it because you're spread out across, or is it because the group is doing other things that are not in the innovations? Like, what is it? What's your special sauce here that you think differentiates you?
Of trial and error. I wish I could say it's one thing. I will say one of the things that we really started doing a lot more of in the past, probably 2 or 3 years, are doing things like hackathons and design thinking sessions where we're bringing
Yeah.
cross-functional teams together to really, instead of just, kind of passively waiting for somebody to put an idea in queue, let's get together and let's talk about some of the challenges the health systems are having. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's do, some ideation sessions around it. And for me, what I have found is with the collaboration between different departments and units and cross-functional teams, we're able to get a lot further. Right now, I think I have 4 or 5 products with our product development team, and all of them but one came from those types of events and sessions where we've got multiple people involved, multiple people weighing in on a device or a digital health product. And it really just makes it that much more well-rounded. And when we can get patients and families involved, even better.
Yeah, because I guess it must be difficult for people in the field to see an issue and come up with a solution like in that moment and then have that submitted, right? Because it's kind of like, okay, let me write it down, let me capture it somehow so I can implement it. But then it's really difficult to do that, right? So it's more of a after the fact. Oh yeah, I remember that. But do you ever have that kind of thing? Did you have any products that sort of like somebody figured out some workaround in the moment and sort of came up with a product idea?
We've had a few of those. We had one innovator who came to me with a prototype she built in her garage, and it was
I love it.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, you're the best, and it was amazing. And I was so excited about it, and we were doing research on it, and we found some obscure other person out there who had made almost the exact same thing that she had built in her garage that was already out, that beat her to market.
Oh no.
So yeah, whenever we get those, it's exciting, but then I was bummed we couldn't do a lot with it because there was already somebody else clean in that space. But we do have those people, and we have the stories of the folks who will be like, this is actually the same innovator. She's on the elevator with a patient, and bad incident takes place. She doesn't have what she needs, and then she goes back to the unit and is like, nobody's ever going to be caught with this again. I'm going to make kits and make sure everybody has what they need when they transport these patients. So we look for those kind of folks who are either just naturally curious or just natural creators that are like, there's a problem here, I'm just going to solve it in real time. And I'll tell you, I think a lot of our, nurses and clinical folks, they're really taught to always follow best practice. And so especially when you've been doing it for 20, 30 years, and it's always, I got to follow best practice. I do not deviate. This is the best thing for the patient. Sometimes it can be hard to kind of think like, how else might I do this? Or how else might I solve this problem when it's been drilled into you to follow best practice. And that's what we want people to do. You can, when you want to fail safely, come innovate with us. We want the best for patients and patient care. But the other interesting thing about it is a lot of the folks that have kind of think, oh, I'm not that inventive, or, I've always been taught to follow best practice. I don't know if I can problem solve in that way. They're the same ones that you walk down the hospital halls and you see them taping like tongue depressors to the side of the hospital bed to make little devices to help them with whatever it is they need done. I see it all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are all like innovating in real time and you don't even know you're doing it. So we take time and we walk the halls. So, I think in Lean, it's called go to the Gemba, but it's really, and, I think some managers do management by walking around. I call it kind of innovation by walking around. Let's go look and see what people are doing in the hallways. Let's go look at their challenges that they've got posted on their boards in the hallway, their lean management systems, and see if there's anything that we can work with them on. And I think just taking the time to walk around and talk to people really makes a difference. And the other thing we try to do too is just source problems. So if we can gather as much data as we can, if we hear over and over and over again that something is a challenge or a problem in healthcare, we'll bring a group of people together to ideate around a solution. So it's not always necessary for somebody to bring us an idea. A lot of times we just want to know what the problem is and how can we help, and what ways can we look at to try and solve it, whether it's commercializable or not, because helping them solve those challenges will lead to them thinking about how to solve the next one. And that's where you're going to start to get more and more creative and innovative ideas.
Yeah. And of course, one of the tenets of design thinking is look at the workarounds, right? So if somebody's put a workaround in place, there's a problem there that needs to be solved. And there may be better ways. I mean, sometimes a workaround becomes the solution, right? But the
Absolutely.
workaround usually is an indicator that there's something else that you could do there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the workarounds are the biggest thing. And that's kind of one of the first things I tell people. A lot of times we'll go in and we'll, present to a group we've never presented to before. And I'll say, raise your hand if you think you're an innovator. And in healthcare, you'll get maybe one person who raises their
Yeah.
hand. And then I'll be like, how many of you spend half of your day doing workaround? And like every hand in the room goes up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah. And so then they kind of put two and two together and like, oh, we're already doing this. So I think it's really just helping people to see that there's a creator and an innovator inside of all of us. And how do we get that out, or how do we help them realize in the moment that they are creating, and that maybe we need a more permanent solution to this.
Fantastic. So do you use any kind of reward system? I know you were mentioning that some of the credit for the product goes back to, and some of the profits of the product go back. What other kind of rewards do you use
Sure.
to keep people?
Yeah, so in addition to splitting the profits back, we do try to work with our health system part, with our marketing departments, and we'll do what we can to promote, like if there's an innovator who's been successful in bringing a product to market with us, or if there's just an innovator who's become kind of an internal champion, there's a lot of different ways that we'll try to maybe highlight them, promote them, let people know about it. I do a lot on LinkedIn. I'm always trying to promote our innovators, and even the startups that we work with. A lot of them just become near and dear to my heart so quickly that I wish I could give all of you money. But we do try to highlight them as much as we can and really focus on those innovators. We have one innovator out of a Vera health system that I think has submitted, gosh, I don't even know, 35 to 40 ideas. And everyone in our organization knows her name. They know, what's going on with her. So we always try to promote those people and make sure that we celebrate them as much as we can. It can be a little bit difficult because we aren't part of the health system, even though we're a partner with them. Sometimes we can't always get the marketing resources that we need. So those are kind of that's one of the challenges of being outside of the hospital walls. But for a lot of our hospitals, we really become, most people don't even see us as a separate entity. We become part of their ecosystem.
Right. So how do you promote what you're doing to people internally? So if they, like when somebody new starts, is it part of the onboarding process to say, hey, if you've got any ideas on how to improve things, go to these guys? I mean, how do you promote yourselves internally?
Yeah, so internally at the hospitals, there's a few different ways. Part of it's through marketing, part of it, but clinical people aren't sitting in front of their computer waiting for like, oh, I need this week's, update on what's happening in the hospital. They're out working with patients. So we have to find other ways. Sometimes we'll do things like invite them to town hall meetings, invite them to open houses. We've done some virtually this year. We had to pivot to a lot virtual, which is hard because we can't be there walking the halls. Time clock posters, things like that. But we also will really try to just make our way around and get in front of people, talk to them and let them know, hey, we're here. We will partner with HR to do things like new hire orientations, so they know about us from the first time that they come into the hospital system. But there's a lot being thrown at them in that time. So you've always got to have those reminders that, hey, we're here and we're here to help. And a lot of times the new hires are the most excited because this is a new thing for them that maybe they didn't have at their hospital before.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a bit about some challenges that you overcame in bringing this thing in? Because it sounds like you've had smooth sailing. I mean, I love the way you sound. It sounds like, oh yeah, we just came in there, we got these ideas and we created all these POCs and boom, then we hit the market and like everybody was like all systems go. I mean, did you come up against any challenges that you had to overcome?
Oh yes, challenges every day. I wish it was that easy. I really, really do. It's even hard.
Well, you make it sound easy. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. It's hard in this space to create metrics, right? Because you create a metric, oh, we want so many ideas in, you're driving the wrong behavior. People are putting ideas in just to get them in. So you meet that measure of success, right? Or we want to bring so many ideas to market. Well, that might drive the wrong behavior too, because you don't want bad ideas to be brought to market just because you need to meet a measure of success. So metrics, I think, are a challenge. Like, how do we celebrate our success and show people our success? I think also really just navigating the healthcare systems. So most of us have worked in healthcare for a certain percentage of time. We do bring in outside folks though as well. They've got a really great perspective to offer. I have a team of people, and the other national director has a team of people as well, that are embedded in the health system. So they become that health system's liaison. So they're called our client engagement executives. And so I've got one with the health systems I work with. I've got one at Valley Children's, one at Chalk Children's, and one at Multicare. And then my whole team supports what we do with Providence as well. So that helps a lot because those folks really get to know the health system pretty well and become a little bit more embedded in it. But it's definitely not easy. I mean, we run into challenges with maybe we have something in product development, and then I'll go to a startup showcase and I see somebody who's done almost the exact same thing and they're, months and months ahead of us. So there's a lot of times we've had to stop projects in the middle of product development. Those things happen. I mean, there's people that are going to beat us to market. We do try to, do as robust searches as we can. We try to use, be smart and use data to kind of guide us how, oh gosh, we have some ideas that we'll get the same idea in over and over and over again. And maybe we'll think, this isn't that big of a problem in the beginning. And then we'll be like, well, we keep getting this over and over again. Maybe we need to take a new look at it. But, I think anybody who works in innovation in any industry, it's hard. It's not, you don't snap your fingers and bring a product to market overnight. And in healthcare, you've got regulatory to deal with. There's just, I guess you have in every industry, but you've got so many challenges that can kind of get in your way. I think one of the biggest challenges for health IT is really how providers have to work and their workflows. Mm-hmm. If you're going to create something for health IT, you better make sure it's integrated into their workflow, because if it takes them outside of that workflow, it's not going to get adopted. A lot of providers only have a certain amount of time to see patients, whether they're, a clinic or whether they're, on a unit in the hospital. And so we've got to make sure that we're integrating either into the EMR or into their current workflow, which can mean more development time, more money. So it really just depends, but there are challenges everywhere. I don't want to make it seem easy at all, but we really love what we do.
Do you have the ROI challenge? Because that's always the
Yeah.
first question is, what's the ROI on this innovation? And it's like, how can I tell you what the ROI is? This is a brand new to the world product. We don't know who the market's going to be. We don't know how much we're going to make out of it, but you still want ROI right up front. I mean, how do you deal with that question?
It's really hard. We do try our best to try to guesstimate, and I'll say guesstimate because that's really what it is. In the upfront, what is it going to cost for us to manufacture this? What does the market size look like? What percentage of the market do we think we can capture? And we're usually pretty conservative about that ROI question, because we would rather meet it and blow it out of the water than set up a goal that's unattainable. So we do try to look at what percentage of the market we think we can capture, and then just make our best decisions off of that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when something is brand new, or if it's something that maybe we've never seen before, I mean, I can imagine, when the first iPod came out, there was just the music player, we all had our Sony Walkmans or whatever back in the day. That was going to take off, right? That was something that was brand new. It was a complete industry disruptor. We had no idea what was going to happen with it, but luckily now we've got these great iPhones and other devices similar to it. Mm-hmm. But I think that's part of the challenge too, is you're really working in the unknown. And I think the thing that's probably the hardest for me is I'm really, really passionate about pediatric healthcare. And I'm luckily fortunate enough to work with two fantastic pediatric hospitals that we spend a lot of time at. This thing that really stinks about pediatrics is if something is made specifically for peds patients, it's almost always a small market size. So weighing that against the cost and the spend can be really hard. And we've had to close projects because we can't get the ROI that we need on them. And that's unfortunate, because really we just want to help these patients out. And that's our goal and our mission, is to understand what some of the needs are and try to solve them and bring new things forward. So those are always hard conversations for me, because a lot of times I see the need, and I see, that I always think we need a nonprofit arm for innovation that can handle some of these types of things, that can handle some of these small market size situations where the need is great, but maybe we're not going to make any money on it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I see that all the time, because there are great ideas that never go anywhere because there's not enough ROI, right?
Yeah. And
they fall into this category of, this is fantastic, it's going to benefit these people so much, but there's just not enough of them. And I mean, I had this issue when I was working with Yahoo. They were saying the same thing. They're like, well, we really love this product and it's great, but if it's going to have less than 1 million audience, we can't touch it because it's just not worth it for us. But it's like, I mean, what are you going to do with, I don't know, Dachshund owners or something like that? Like you have to have Yahoo Pets, but you can't have Yahoo Dachshunds because there's not enough people or something like that.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, I'm hoping that as we see, I'm hoping that as we see more adoption of digital health and that kind of thing, that we'll see some of those trends change. But I think I'm just being overly optimistic. It's just hard. I mean, businesses aren't going to invest in something that's not going to make them money, unfortunately. But it makes it hard for, kids that have chronic conditions or other types of things that they could really use help with.
Yeah, there's got to be a way around it. I mean, there have been, like you said, there could be a nonprofit arm, there could be money from other sources or something like that. But it's unfortunate that these things fit in this category where they're great ideas, but they'll never be built, even though they'll help a lot of people.
And it's not to say that we never would. We do try to find ones that maybe have a little less ROI, but that are still a big need. Like right now, we're working on a brace for tremors for kids with ataxic cerebral palsy that actually came from the child sending a video to us and to the hospital that we were working with, showing us all the challenges that he has. And so that market size can be expanded to adults as well, and that helps us, but it's not going to be the largest market in the world. But it's still something that we're working on and bringing forward because we do think that we can get enough ROI, and hopefully we can get enough ROI from other projects to kind of offset that as well. So we try to, just like we try to do the ones that are more game changing and more incremental, we try to kind of diversify the portfolio a little bit that way too.
Yeah, well, you got to have a little bit of both, right? Otherwise, some of the disruptive stuff, it's really tough to ROI it. But the incremental, it's a lot easier because people understand what it is. You don't have to do a lot of education.
Exactly. Yeah. If we have a steep learning curve, then we know that we're up against a battle. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about a product from beginning to end? Like you said, there's about 20 of them. Are they actually out in the marketplace right now, these 20 products?
Yep. So we have, I can tell you about a couple of them. So one of our more incremental ones, I mentioned CVS earlier. We had a hand surgeon that came to us. One of the first ideas that ever came into us, who said, I do these hand surgeries and I tell people to go home and elevate their hand for a certain amount of time. So he says, go home and do this. And they go home and they don't do this. And it takes people
mostly because it looks silly.
It does look a little bit silly. And it's not comfortable, right? So a lot of patients were using traditional arm slings, but it still wasn't elevating their hand over the heart for the right amount of time. So this surgeon came to us, wanted to create a sling that you could rise up to elevate the hand above the heart for that prescribed amount of time and then drop it back down. And we created it. We have some patents on it. And if you go into CVS and look for an arm sling, that's the one you're going to buy because that's what's on their store shelves right now.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, but it took some time to get, and you would think, oh, it's just a sling, but there are points of patentability. It was a real need that we identified, and it can be used by, any patient who needs one, whether they need to elevate for a little bit or not. But when in other situations, like we've got one company that we're going to be spinning out named Invenio, which is a pharmacogenomics platform. In that case, the health system that we're working with it on had already created this pharmacogenomics platform for their hospital. And it basically, it's using DNA to understand how someone that has behavioral health challenges would metabolize certain medications so that you can pinpoint what medication they need to be on sooner. If you've ever known anybody with depression, for example, it can take 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer, to get the medication mix just right for them. And so with this technology, we can actually pinpoint a lot sooner what they should be taking and get them dialed in and feeling much better about things a lot faster. So we are going to be hopefully being able to expand their research and scale this up to a larger organization, which will be Invenio, and then we'll be able to take it to market. The key differentiator here too is this was something they were already doing, and this was something their research team had already dialed in. So we just said, this is a great opportunity. Let's expand it. What else can we do? So we look for things inside the hospitals that are already pretty well baked or already done and being used. But for them, the physician is ordering this DNA test and it becomes part of the patient record. as opposed to if I just go to like a 23andMe and get my own DNA test done. And I think that there's a lot that can be done with that as we move forward if they have other health conditions and other things that come up. So I think you're going to see pharmacogenomics continuing to grow, and hopefully, in some good ways that can really help some people out.
I love the sound of that. So once you've done the DNA test, then you can expand beyond that, right? Because you've got that set of data, which doesn't really change.
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
can do anything.
Absolutely. And it's just a matter of having all of the systems in place so that we can scale it up as big as we need it to be. So it's going to take some time to build it to that scale, but we're working on it right now. And so hopefully in the next, 6 months or so, you'll see something come out about Invenio. But that process was a little bit different because it was already well baked, and we're turning it into a startup. So we had to, hire a team and all of that to kind of run it. Whereas if we just bring a product to market, we're usually starting from scratch, going through, doing the whole vetting process, market assessment, having IP, our intellectual property and licensing team take a look at it, understanding what avenues we could take as far as that's concerned. And then, in correlation or at the same time, product development is working on, early prototypes to kind of try to bring it to market. The majority of the products that we work on are licensed out. It's pretty rare that we'll do a startup around one product, especially if it's a device. Typically it fits in better with somewhere else. So like the sling, for example, fit in better with retail. And we've got like a program that was started at one of our member systems that is on that's now available as a module on learning management systems. So we were able to take that and commercialize that, and now other health systems can use it too, and they don't have to make their own. They can just buy it instead of make it. So there's a lot of different avenues we take with things, but our process is usually the same. We do that upfront vetting, and then we take a look to see where we might fit in the market, understand potentially what that ROI could be as well as we can, and then make some decisions about whether or not we want to invest and move forward.
Nice. Well, I really love your model, and I'm surprised that I see we could probably use it elsewhere, right? I mean, as long as they're non-competitive, right? Because the hospitals don't really compete with each other, do they?
Well, they do and they don't.
Sort of.
That's a loaded question, Chris. I think you're seeing less of that competitiveness now as they start to bring in more innovation, and we start to do things like sharing data so that we can use things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to understand, better how to treat our patients and how to make better clinical decisions. But I do think that it is a model that others could potentially work from, for sure.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Okay, so now it's time to think like a futurist. It's the year 2031. 10 years from now, what are things going to be like?
Loaded question. So we've all heard about consumerism in healthcare, right? That's the big hot, those are the hot kind of buzzwords right now. I think you're going to see, the one good thing that COVID did for us is it really helped us understand how to expand telehealth very well. Hospitals that were barely using it are now using it 20 times more than they were before. Hospitals that had like 2 visits a week have gone to 2,000 a week. So wow. I think we're going to see telehealth continue to evolve. And with that, what I'm hoping for by 2031, we've got a lot of folks that live in rural areas that don't have access to telehealth, and they have to drive 2 or 3 hours to go, to a hospital or to see somebody. So I think when you think about like what SpaceX is doing with their Starlink platform, I think that we could start to see more connectivity brought to these rural populations so that we can give them more choices. I also think you're going to see a lot more retail integration. So right now, you've started to see, especially up in the Seattle area with Providence, clinics pop up inside of airports, clinics popping up in different places. I think we're going to see a lot more integration with retail as we continue down this path. I think by the time we get to 2031, you're really going to be able to get care wherever you need to, when you need to, because this is what this next generation is growing up with. My son's 19. If he wants something, he wants it now because he's always been able to get it now. I always tell people the story when he was in high school. He would, like 2 weeks before school started, he came up to me and he's like, "Mom, I need to go see a dermatologist. I have zits and I can't go back to school like this." He'll kill me for telling this story, by the way. And I've told it many times. So he owes me a lot. a lot of pre-K. But you know, I told, and even I work in innovation. I should have known better, but I was like, oh, you know, we'll call your primary care physician. We'll get you an appointment. It's probably gonna take a couple weeks. But just so you know, we're gonna have to wait for a referral. It's probably gonna take about a month before you're gonna be able to see anybody. And he's like, what? That answer was not acceptable to him. And he came running back up the stairs, and 5 minutes later, he came back down with dermatologist on call, downloaded to his phone. And he's like, look, I can see a doctor today. So I'm like, well, let's try it. And we took pictures, sent it over, you know, and we had a prescription waiting for him before the end of the night. You know, all through an app, which is something I should have thought of. I work in this space, hello, but I'm so used to the status quo. I've dealt with healthcare the way it was my whole life. And so for me, I'm just used to, okay, I got to go and call my PCP and I got to wait. But for younger generations, they're not going to put up with that. And think about the generations that are now having babies, like those are the people that want, you know, they want it right now and they want it the way that they want it. So I think we're going to continue to see consumers driving what healthcare looks like and healthcare delivery models look like. Remote patient monitoring, I think, is going to grow. Hospital to home has become a really big deal, especially during COVID. Patients don't want to go to long-term care facilities or skilled nursing facilities anymore if they don't have to. They really want to make sure that they're at home. So, and we need those things for people with chronic conditions. I think you'll see a lot of the remote patient monitoring continue to get better so that if you do have a chronic condition, you don't have to go see your doctor every month. You can do things virtually. Like we're doing now. So that, I think that's one place. I think as far as like other places that I think we'll see healthcare continue to evolve, AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality is, you know, it's been a buzzword for a long time in healthcare, but I'm really now probably in the last year or so starting to see a lot more hospitals adopting it. There were some early adopters, like Children's Hospital Los Angeles has done a lot of things in the AR, VR space. But it's continuing to grow. There's a lot more call for it. It's a great way to train and educate both providers as well as patients and families. You can do more simulations, and patient experience is becoming, you know, more and more talked about. It's always been talked about, but you can use tools like AR and VR for distraction therapy, which means there have been studies done that show that you don't have to give as much pain medication when you've got that distraction going on. So I think you'll see more and more coming down the pipeline with that. We were actually working on something right now in that space as well. Big data, like I said before, we've been hearing about big data for years. It's really just recently, I think, that hospitals are starting to be open to sharing their data because they are starting to realize we can leverage, you know, AI and machine learning so much better if we've got a bigger data set. So I think you're going to start to see more of that. And there are some folks that are worried, like, is it, you know, is artificial intelligence going to replace the doctor? And I really don't think that's a concern. No, it's not, and it can't. I mean, somebody has to go.
They're so far. But the thing is, AI, people have, I think what's happened is that the fear of AI has been put into us by the mainstream media. And we're like, it's not that advanced. I mean, I've done studies. I know people who are in the AI space, and they're like going, "Are you kidding me? You know, it can barely set a table. You really expect it to operate on you? No, we're nowhere near it."
Yes, and you know, I mean, I think with robotics we'll get some of that too. But honestly, you're not going to see the need for these physicians going away, at least not by 2031. And somebody, no matter what the algorithm tells us, somebody who knows what they're doing has to go in and validate that, yes, that's true. And so I think, you know, it'll be more leaned on for clinical decision support, trying to understand, you know, risk factors. Is this person at risk of being readmitted? I think we'll find new models of measuring those kinds of things. Or, you know, hey, I'm a white female of however many years old that I won't say out loud. And maybe I'm at risk for certain things because of my health history. If you compare it to other people of similar age range and similar, you know, socioeconomic backgrounds, that you'll start to see that there's trends. And so it may help us take better control of our own healthcare. And so I honestly think it's only a matter of time before we start to see it coming into the consumer space where you can put your own data in and say, ooh, these are the things I'm at risk for. Maybe I should ask about it, which could be good or bad.
Yeah.
It's like WebMD, you know, oh, doctor.
Yeah. Well, I can't I can't wait for the tricorder, from Star Trek, the medical tricorder, where you just like scan somebody with it, pass it over them, and they'll say, "Oh, you have this," or "You need this," or whatever. But we're getting close to that. I mean, isn't there like devices you can blow into that will like tell your metabolism, tell you what to eat, what not to eat, stuff like that? I mean, we're getting close to that, right?
I think we're getting closer and closer. I mean, and there's things that, there's AI algorithms that can read, scans and things like that. I think that we are getting closer, but I think, that future is still probably a long ways away. But I think it's only going to enable better patient care. I think it's only going to help our physicians. And I think you're right. I think media and movies have really made people think like, oh my gosh, we're going to live in this crazy world where everything is where computers take over. And, who knows, maybe we're there someday. I don't know that we want to get there, but I do think that for now, at least in the next 10 years, AI and machine learning can be a really big helper and a big enabler of what we need to do to deliver better patient care.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So this has been great. Thank you so much. I love the concept, and I want to see if somebody could experiment using it in other spaces, because I think this is a really, really great idea that you guys are doing. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Sure. They can email me or they can give me a call. My email address is Suzy, SUZY, .Engwall, ENGWALL, @4 change.com, or you can give me a text, shoot me a text, or give me a call at 714-234-6349. And that's my cell phone number, and I keep it on me all the time.
Awesome.
I'm probably going to
this is
my
great.
world up to a whole bunch of crazy calls, but that's okay.
Well, if you want, I'll put your contact information in the show notes. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, that's the best way. Awesome.
That'd be great.
So thank you so much. This is great. Great talking with you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.